I had just set the last candle onto my birthday cake, a soft blue one my daughters insisted symbolized wisdom, when an unexpected knock echoed through the house. It wasn't the light, playful tap of a neighbor or the excited pounding of grandchildren. No, this knock carried weight. It sounded hesitant, almost apologetic, like whoever stood outside wasn't sure they belonged there. My husband, Mark, stiffened the moment the sound reached him. He had been laughing just seconds before, telling an old family story, but now the color drained from his face. His hand tightened around the back of his chair as if bracing himself for something only he could sense approaching. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked, wiping frosting from my fingers. He shook his head, but his eyes said otherwise. The room fell quiet. Even the grandchildren seemed to sense a shift in the air. Mark walked toward the door slowly, each step heavy with a history none of us knew about. When he finally pulled it open, a cool breeze swept inside, along with three figures, a woman in her 50s, a teenage boy hovering protectively beside her, and a little girl clutching a worn photograph. The woman's eyes filled with recognition, relief, and something close to heartbreak. "Mark," she said softly. We found you." Time seemed to freeze. The room behind me blurred as I watched my husband's shoulders sag, as if 30 years of secrets had suddenly pressed down on him all at once. And in that moment, I knew our lives were about to change forever. The woman stepped inside slowly, as if unsure whether she was welcome, while the boy and the little girl lingered close to her sides. Mark didn't move. He stood frozen in the doorway, shoulders hunched, eyes wide, like a man staring at a past he'd tried to bury so deeply it startled him to see it walk right into the light. "My name is Lila," the woman began, her voice trembling but steady enough to carry across the quiet room. We didn't come to cause trouble. We just wanted to see you. After all this time." Mark swallowed hard. 30 years, he whispered, more to himself than to any of us. "I didn't think you'd ever look for me." Our daughters, who had been excitedly taking birthday pictures just moments earlier, now stood rooted to the floor. Confusion, fear, and disbelief spread across their faces. I could feel their eyes darting between their father and the strangers, searching for answers none of us had yet. Lila took a breath, then continued gently, "He saved us. All of us. I wouldn't be standing here without him. Back then, he disappeared before we could thank him. We tried to find him so many times, and when we finally did, we felt we owed it to him, and to ourselves, to come." Mark's hands shook slightly. "I wasn't hiding you," he said, voice cracking. "I was hiding the memory. I never thought I deserved recognition for doing what anyone human should do." His words hung in the air like fragile glass, and that was when I realized, this wasn't a scandal, nor a betrayal. It was a wound he had carried alone for decades. We gathered in the living room, not because anyone asked us to, but because the weight of what had just entered our home pulled us there. Mark sank into his usual armchair, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. Lila sat across from him, her children tucked in close, as if still afraid the world might collapse around them. She started slowly, choosing her words with care. "It was during the earthquake," she said. "The building, it felt like it had been waiting to crumble. I was 16. My brother was 9. My baby sister was barely walking." She paused, steadying her breath. "Your husband, he carried us out. All three of us." I blinked. Mark had never once mentioned an earthquake. He'd never spoken of saving anyone. He'd barely talked about that period of his life at all. Lila continued, her voice soft but full of emotion. "He kept going back inside, even when the ground kept shaking. People told him to stop. They said the place would come down on him next. But he wouldn't leave until he knew we were safe." Mark's jaw tightened, guilt, grief, memory all colliding inside him. When it was over, Lila said, "He stayed with us for days. Helped us find shelter. Helped my sister eat when she was too scared to cry. And then, one morning, he was gone. Just gone. Like an angel that didn't want to be thanked." My heart twisted as I looked at him. I thought I knew my husband. But now, seeing him through Lila's eyes, I understood. He wasn't just a good man. He was a man who had carried the weight of saving lives, and the pain of their memories, alone. As the evening settled into a soft hum, half disbelief, half awe, the tension that once filled the room slowly eased into something gentler. Our daughters, who had been stunned into silence, were now quietly offering cookies to the children. Lila wiped her eyes every few minutes, as if still unsure this reunion was truly happening. And Mark, my husband, sat there like a man whose soul had finally exhaled after decades of being held too tight. That's when I remembered the small box I had hidden behind the cake. I walked to the dining table, picked it up, and held it in both hands for a moment. I had planned to give it to Mark at the end of a cheerful birthday dinner, not after his past had walked through our door and rewritten the night. But somehow, this moment felt more fitting, more honest. "Mark," I said gently, stepping toward him. He looked up, eyes red but clearer than they had been all night. "I have something for you." He hesitated, as if unsure he deserved anything right now. But he reached out. I placed the box in his hands. He stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "A reminder," I said softly, "of who you truly are. And who you've always been." Inside the box was a scrapbook I had spent months creating. Notes from neighbors he helped, photos of the community projects he led, thank you cards from students he mentored over the years. All the quiet acts of kindness he never considered remarkable. "You didn't hide your goodness," I whispered. "You just never bragged about it." Mark's breath caught, and his hands trembled, not from fear, but from finally being seen. For a moment, the room was completely still. Mark held the scrapbook against his chest the way someone might hold a long-lost memory finally returned home. Then, in the gentlest movement, the little girl, Lila's granddaughter, walked up to him. She tugged at his sleeve, her small hand trembling just a bit. When he looked down, she climbed onto his lap as naturally as if she had known him her whole life. She leaned close, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you," she said, "for saving my grandma, so she could grow up and become my grandma." Mark pressed a shaking hand over his mouth. I saw something break inside him, not a painful break, but the kind that lets light in. We relit the birthday candles, though there were fewer than the years behind him. The glow filled the room, bouncing off the scrapbook pages, the balloons, the tearful smiles. There was no music, no party games, no fancy decorations, just two families who had been strangers an hour earlier standing together like they'd always belonged. We gathered around the cake, everyone touching shoulders, hands, or hearts. Mark cleared his throat, still emotional, and said, "I didn't save you. I just did what any person with a heartbeat should have done." Lila shook her head gently. "No, Mark, you saved us, and you kept saving people, even when no one watched." As he blew out the candles, the flame seemed to linger in the air, not fading but spreading, like kindness passed from one life to another. And in that warm, glowing room, surrounded by gratitude and new beginnings, I realized this wasn't just a birthday. It was a reminder that the world becomes better every time one person chooses to carry someone else through the darkness.